Hey, Molly Karam here. Listen up, people. We got a big favor to ask, and we promise it won't take up too much of your time. You know our show is supported by some fantastic sponsors, right? Well, we'd love to hear your feedback. Head to podcast.study and fill out a short, anonymous survey. That's it, we swear. Again, that's podcast.study. Thank you kindly.
Shelburne, Gutierrez, Yates, Isola, Rodgers! He's okay! Actually, he's a little bit better than okay. Also, a tie that was a loss, a tie that was a win, a tie that was a monocle, and a neckbeard that's an MVP. We got week one reactions and overreactions. And the U.S. Open Women's Final, also known as how tennis managed to lose friends, alienate people, and make everybody unhappy. I mean, everybody leaves unsatisfied. What an amazing trick you pulled, tennis.
It's Around the Horn, the show of competitive banter. Here's Tony Reali.
The collective thoughts and prayers coming out of the hamlet of Green Bay at halftime must have set a record, and it worked. Aaron Rodgers, the fact that he went from tent to locker room to back in the game opposite of flesh-eating Khalil Mack, the fact that the Packers allowed this down 20-0 was the most stunning thing of week one. That he came back and beat the Chicago Bears, that was a metaphysical certitude for Rodgers. How the Bears took the greatest start to a season you could ever have and the Mac debut and flush it down the toilet, also up for interpretation. Frank, we'll start with you. How much of this comeback was Rodgers being the GOAT, and how much of it was some of the things the Bears did late in the game?
A lot of this falls on Aaron Rodgers. Here's a guy that missed the last 9 games last season due to injury, and you mentioned it. The worst moment of the weekend is watching him getting carted off the field before halftime, and the best moment is him coming back and leading the comeback. But the Bears played their part, blowing a 20-point lead, and I'll tell you what, their coach, Matt Nagy, he's constantly looking at that play sheet on that third down play late. Run a better play than your quarterback rolling out. In fact, I would have run it twice. You get the first down there.
Right.
Even on fourth down, you could run the clock out.
You have to go for it on fourth down there, right? I mean, you win the game if you get it. Does everyone agree with this? Please, chime in here. Clinton Yates, let's talk about that play first then.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I want to get back to Rodgers here because I think that's important to state because Rodgers, not only for the Packers is a big situation, for fans of the league in general, Rodgers goes down. That's a huge issue overall. So that was a massive, hold your breath moment across the country. And for him to come back and win that game, I mean, listen, the comeback was one thing. It was only 3 touchdowns. It wasn't the most. But I was really relieved we didn't get robbed.
It was only 3 touchdowns. I'm sorry. It's so,
it
they happen all the time, these 3 touchdown comebacks in the second half.
I'm saying it wasn't 40 points. It wasn't, you know what I'm saying? My point is, you expect Rodgers to be able to score 3 touchdowns in a half. Thing is, though, he comes back and you're relieved. Finally, we get to see the greatness, and that's really what this is to me. You finally get to see the guy who we waited so long to do because of that collarbone injury get back to it, and he did it at home. It was a fun moment.
Aaron Rodgers has 2 20-point comebacks recently. The entire NFL has 2 20-point comebacks recently that aren't done by Aaron Rodgers, so it's not something that happens all the time. Israel Gutierrez, how about you?
Yeah, that fourth down call, kind of mindless. It's cowardly, if you will. We've seen that before, though, right? Trubisky was pretty good in the first half, not so good in the second half. We've seen that before. He's a young quarterback. Man, what we saw from Aaron Rodgers, never mind that he had the one leg, and every time you're sitting there in the pocket, you have got to be nervous as all get out that somebody's going to collapse on your leg and finish the job, if you will. So you think you're going to get a watered-down version of Aaron Rodgers. And you kind of do. But that watered-down version of Aaron Rodgers is still amazing because he can only take 3 steps and just zing it in there perfectly or, sit back there in the pocket somehow calmly while all kinds of chaos is going on around him and drop a perfect pass 50 yards in the end zone. Look, the Chicago Bears did their part to losing this game, and you can criticize them all you want if you're a fan of theirs, but watching Aaron Rodgers come back after that scare and do that tells you I don't care how many limbs he has. Just throw him out on there on the field. I want to see him
Seems
play.
like Bears fans may even be more optimistic because of the way their teams looked in the last couple of years and then the way they started that game. But the way they started that game, Ramona, and then the way they ended that game, they dropped an interception. If that's an interception in the last minute of the game, we're not viewing Aaron Rodgers the same way, of course. Ramona, please go ahead.
Yeah, listen, well, first of all, I'm disappointed in Isola because I thought you were going to be the guy being like, well, it wasn't like it was 28-3 in the Super Bowl.
No, Clinton was that guy. Clinton was that guy.
It's not like Paul Pierce in the wheelchair coming back into the game.
I knew somebody was going to bring that up. Yeah.
I mean, no, listen, this was an incredible performance from Aaron Rodgers. Like, I really thought he broke his leg when he went down like that. I watched it over and over, and the way that they fell, that the defensive lineman fell on his leg with all that weight, I was like, he either tore a knee ligament or he broke his leg. So for him to come back out and do that was incredible. And I like that he stood up and said, this is what they pay us a lot of money for. I mean, this is a guy who just signed a record-breaking contract and wants to earn every bit of his money. But to me, like, this is the Raider fan in me talking. Khalil Mack was incredible. And John Gruden he's already on the hot seat based on how good Khalil Mack was. And this should have been Khalil Mack's game. Like, his presence in the first half was incredible. I think he kind of got gassed in the second half, and maybe missing training camp does have some repercussions, but this should have been the Bears. This should have been about Khalil Mack, and it wasn't because
I sold it back in.
And what Ramona said, too, here's Aaron Rodgers sitting on that gigantic contract. The first half of the first game, he could have said, you know what? I'll see you week 2. You talk about leadership, going out there and not only playing, but playing well. You can see how he just lifted everybody's confidence. Unbelievable performance.
I have to go back, though, to the third and the fourth down play where they kicked the field goal to go up 6. The difference between going up 6 and being up 3, there is no difference. You're either tied if they kick a field goal or you lose the game regardless the way you lost the game. So the idea that, and I know Nagy's a rookie head coach, but he's a young rookie head coach. I thought the young guys were ahead of the game here a little bit and knew to go for it on fourth down to win the game. Take a chance. Control your own destiny. We're going to move on here. Get back to the NFL in a second, but the nuclear fallout from the U.S. Open Women's Finals still contaminating everything it touches. Let's scrub in. WTA released a statement saying they're committed to making sure women get treated the same as men and there's no double standard. Quote, we do not believe this was done last night. So they did say Serena was onto something, saying men don't get treated this way. At the same time, the WTA fined Serena Williams. So, a lot of questions here. The initial coaching warning, did Serena get unfairly marked for that? Did she go overboard with the racket in reaction to chair up? Which is to say, does John McEnroe and Nick Kyrgios get that game penalty for arguing, as Serena said? Did the match get decided by it? And on top of all of it, how Osaka was robbed of her championship moment and hijacked by it all. And will she ever be able to look back happily on this? Or will tennis fans ever remember her dominance in the match? Ramona, start us off.
Well, listen, anytime people are reacting as strongly as people have reacted to Serena Williams and what happened here, it's probably because it represents something much larger. And I know for myself and for a lot of women that I speak to, I was texting with 5 or 6 of my friends in the business, outside the business, and we react very strongly to it because there's a few things that women hate doing, right? We don't like it when people tell us to calm down. Okay, but the reason why is because for most of the time, women are modulating their behavior. They're softening their behavior. They're acting polite. And Serena Williams does this day in and day out. You saw with the cat suit at the French Open. You see in the way she goes through life and all the jabs she faces all day long, every single day of being Serena Williams. And so in this situation, she was standing up for herself. And I understand, as a competitor, you don't want the umpire to take you off your game. She was melting down in that final. This is another final where she gets there. She's trying to break the record. But she felt picked on. She felt singled out. And this is something that she puts up with every single day. But in that spot, when she's going for history, for that referee for that umpire to call her out for a violation that is never called, that is something that she felt extremely singled out by, and then for her to calmly say, look, you're saying you think I'm doing this. I'm not doing this. That was a calm reaction, and he never stepped in and listened to her as a person. He never treated her with the respect that Serena Williams flat out deserves.
Frank Isola?
I didn't see anything calm about Serena Williams on Saturday night, and that chair umpire has warned. It was a warning for coaching, okay? And I'll stick with 2 women. Mary Carrillo on MSNBC, Martina Navratilova in the New York Times, both blame this. They put this on Serena's behavior. While she was arguing that my coach is not coaching and you're accusing me of cheating, the coach was being interviewed and admitting that he was coaching. So her whole entire argument fell apart. She then smashed her racket, and the umpire's going by the letter of the law. That is a point penalty. Lindsay Davenport on the Tennis Channel then says if Serena keeps this up, She's going to get a game penalty, and that's exactly what happened. The responsibility, I mean, we have to reach a point here where the responsibility falls on the player who's a great player, but has a history of this at the U.S. Open.
Glenn Yates.
A great player. She's the greatest player of all time. And when you're in a situation in a U.S. Open final, that is not the time to try to adjudicate the random letter of a law of a thing that happens all the time. That's the point here. Wrong. The chair umpire botched this from a simple procedural standpoint. You don't let it get out of hand. And the way he could have done that was by respecting her and what she said. Okay, you think that violation happens, whether or not you're calling that or not is a different discussion. But he can't let that get to that point. He embarrassed all of tennis, and it was hard to watch. This was very, very painful, quite frankly, as a tennis fan, to see Serena, the greatest, crying on the sideline. You can't have that. I'm sorry. This was ugly all the way around.
Israel Gutierrez.
And I know it sounds like, Frank, that everybody's arguing and making special rules for Serena, but the letter of the law thing, as Clinton mentioned, is what we're talking about here, right? So first of all, let me talk about that coaching rule thing. So if somebody does this, and let me see if you can see maybe half of my hand and maybe my thumbs right in front of my chest. If that's telling me, you're telling me that not only is Serena seeing that's some sort of a symbol. At that very moment, she's seeing it, recognizing it, and taking coaching. I think that's ridiculous. Get rid of that rule. Allow for a little bit of back and forth, if you will, from the box, because this is all a judgment call. And this particular umpire has made questionable judgment calls over the course of his career with bigger players. There's a laundry list of people. You want to go with the racket smash. He has been inconsistent at this year's Wimbledon alone with Novak Djokovic when he was playing a match, when he slammed and his opponent did, and only one of them got a penalty because the umpire only saw one of them. Okay, so that idea that you have to enforce that rule right there is not entirely necessary. And then the argument when she got the game violation, a game violation in the U.S. Open final, when she was not out of control, she was loud. I'll give you loud. She was a little bit mean, called him a thief, could have been way meaner. I've heard way meaner. And to essentially take the match away from her right there when she had all sorts of momentum going a couple games before that is absolutely a travesty. And I know everybody wants to make these special rules for Serena, and that's what it sounds like, Frank. But in the end, this particular situation, he was in the wrong here.
Frank, back
and you can turn that into a sexist conversation later, but just in the sport, I believe
after she got broken back in the game. So this idea, listen, we cannot sit here and say that she would not have come back and won the match. I can't sit here and tell you that. But I will say this. Again, you want the umpire not to follow the rules because it doesn't work for the great story that would have been had Serena won. The rule was the coach, she was saying the entire time, you're accusing me of cheating. Serena, hang on a second. Your coach is telling Pam Shriver, yes, I was coaching. So your whole argument right there is
go interview every other coach from every other player and every other big match. They're going to say they were coaching.
She didn't say that, though. She would have been better off saying, hang on a second. In the biggest match of the season, you're going to get on me for something that everybody's doing? She did not say that.
Well, honestly, in that moment, she doesn't know, though. I mean, we can all agree she doesn't know. I mean, she may have seen him doing something. She may not have seen him doing something.
Right.
And the umpire may have seen him doing something, and that's still the letter of the law. But I want to talk about the second layer to this story, which is Serena on the court saying men don't get treated this way. Yep. Something the WTA also volunteered in their statement, that there's a double standard here. Ramona, you addressed it a little bit, but Frank, I want you to address it now specifically.
Explain to me what the double standard is that you're talking about. John McEnroe, when he played and he behaved like this, the tennis world and the media and the fans would come down incredibly hard on John McEnroe. They called him McBrat. Go look at the London tabloids. And when he came to New York, even as a New Yorker playing Jimmy Connors, he was getting booed. So I don't understand where you think there's a double standard. She started the argument based on something which was factual. Her coach was coaching. If you don't like the rule, and I agree with you, but that's the rule. We're getting on an umpire for enforcing the rule. That is his
Ramona
job.
Shelburne?
Nothing she said was anywhere close to anything that John McEnroe did on his best day. I mean, she was making an argument to the chair who said, I know you think that I'm cheating, but I don't cheat. And that to her became a very personal attack, okay? I mean, whether or not she went too far, she couldn't let it go, that you can debate that. But I don't think anything she said, she didn't curse, she didn't call into question. She didn't threaten him.
You'll never officiate one of my matches is a threat.
And so the same thing Rafa Nadal said to him.
That's a threat.
Like
that's a threat as well.
I feel like Federer has said things as well, and he's considered the greatest statesman in the
They
game.
all should be
Clinton,
punished.
I want to give you a word after the horn, and then Frank, you can have a last word.
John McEnroe, 20 years after all that, was getting paid money based on said, attitude about berating people.
It's entirely possible Serena, and from the majority on this panel, it seems like would be open to her being celebrated for the way she has stood up for herself here. Frank, you wanted the last word. I'll give it to you.
I can't, during this argument, she invoked the idea, I have a daughter. I don't know where that came out of. We all know that. And I agree with Clinton. She's the greatest of all time. She's also one of the worst losers of all time.
And Ramona, last word for you.
Yeah, she said that she has a daughter because everything for Serena right now is filtered through the lens of her personal story, of her context, of trying to make history and everything she's been through over the last year. And I think that you cannot separate that on the biggest stage in tennis with her about to become the greatest of all time. You can't separate that.
What about Naomi Osaka's moment? What about her moment?
Thanks for your thoughts, Scott. Got to take a break right here. Buy or sell the inside.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I should have done this years ago.
Disclaimer, traveling back in time is physically impossible unless you know how to build a functioning time machine. Then by all means, travel 25 years back in time, switch your car insurance to Geico. You could save a bunch of money. While you're there, please prevent your younger self from wearing that sleeveless tuxedo t-shirt, parachute pants, and glitter high tops to your senior prom. And at long last, rectify this horrible crime against nature. Geico is absolved of all liability if you destroy the fabric of time and space.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Buy or sell.
Buccaneers 48, Saints 40. A Super Bowl pick that has no defense. A Fitz magic experience for Tampa. That's as good an opening week as you could have with that much neckbeard. Same question as earlier, Ramona. How much of this was Tampa? How much of this was New Orleans?
Well, look, the Saints are supposed to be a Super Bowl contender. I mean, they're one fluke play away from beating the Vikings there and then going to play against the Eagles last year. I mean, that was really a disappointing way out of the gates there for them. And they give 500 yards to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and forced no turnovers. That was a terrible way to start the season in a very tough.
Well, Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson are two big play wideouts, and they can make some quarterbacks look good. But Ryan Fitzpatrick has this ability in him. It's just the lack of consistency that's the problem. So it wasn't really shocking that he could do this. What's more shocking is that Saints secondary let all that stuff go. Although last year, the first 2 weeks of the season weren't too great for the Saints, and they could turn it around after that.
Yates?
Right. They haven't won a home opener. And, they haven't won an opener of the season in like 5 years. So, the Saints are of the business of dropping things early in the season. But for me, this is all about the Buccaneers. Suddenly, they seem to be some kind of a contender in that division when you thought things were going to be terrible because Jameis Winston wasn't playing. If Fitzpatrick can fill in this well, the Bucs actually have a chance on this season.
I'm just happy that I'm still alive. And, of course, I'm talking about the survivor pool because a lot of people do take,
I thought you meant after the first segment.
You got me on that one. And you knew that a lot of people would pick Tampa Bay to lose. But I think this is the one thing the NFL has that the other major sports don't have, where there's so much parity. Like a team like Tampa Bay, you can get a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick. You have a good year. You know what? You can be in contention for a playoff spot.
Frank Isola's still alive. We'll move on. The tie. It was the best of ties. It was the worst of ties. Trademark Tim Kalisha. This a messy mutter. However, for a team that hasn't won in a year and a half, hasn't started 1-0 in 14 years, is a tie a win, and for a team with Super Bowl aspirations and a war with their running back, is a tie a loss. Israel, go.
I'm going to go with the tie as a loss for Pittsburgh here. And I don't know how Le'Veon Bell should necessarily feel because his replacement looked pretty good. But as a unit, the team looked lost, especially toward the end there. So I don't know if he wants to go back to that team, who, by the way, James Conner's celebration, hugging his offensive lineman, I think was a sign or a little bit of a message to Le'Veon. But I don't know why he would want to go back to a team that still doesn't seem like it has.
You think the Steelers are too focused on that, the offensive line and Connor and everything? Clint, you do.
Yes, do you know how I know? Because they couldn't beat the Browns. That's how I know. Come on. What are we talking about here? Le'Veon Bell aside, that's a win you have to have if you expect to be decent on any season at all. They couldn't even get it done.
Isola?
Because of Hard Knocks, I'm a big Browns fan now. If you're going to get 6 turnovers and you're at home, you better win that game. And Myles Garrett, such a great defensive player. His illegal block in the back ruined the field goal. That was a 15-yarder that set them back. That is a classic Browns ending right there.
Shelburne.
It was hard to watch because I find myself caring about the Browns as well after Hard Knocks, and like Tyrod Taylor had this great game for him, I guess, for the Browns. And then at the end he throws this pick that's like the worst thrown ball, and you're like, oh, all they had to do was they could have kicked a field goal at the end of regulation too. They were
so was
trying
that
so hard not to lose.
A win for Cleveland or just
not the way they played. They forced 6 turnovers.
Hey, 0-16 is now in play, so who knows? We'll move on. Quarterback spotlight. We're talking the good we saw from Patrick Mahomes and Alex Smith. The moments we saw from Andrew Luck in his first game back in 2 years and the first loss for Garoppolo ever. Clint, whose game was most significant?
To me, it was Mahomes. I love that kid. I've liked him ever since he was in college, and I think it was a nice little transition for Kansas City. And for Garoppolo, yikes, that is not going well for him and Kyle Shanahan.
Isola?
Happy to see Andrew Luck back, but for me, it's Pat Mahomes, whose dad was a pitcher, and that guy can throw the ball. The combination of him and Tyreek Hill, pretty interesting.
Shelburne?
Yeah, I think it's Andrew Luck. I mean, this is a top 5 quarterback who felt like he could retire if he couldn't get his health in order, and now he's back, and he looks just like Andrew Luck looked before. If it wasn't for Jack Doyle, his buddy, making that terrible play at the end there, I think Indy would have won that.
Okay. Gutierrez?
I'm withholding judgment on our boy Patrick Mahomes going to the Hall of Fame because, Alex Smith had this exact same game in week 1 last year. Yeah. So it wasn't even that crazy impressive. But I'm going to go with Andrew Luck as well. I mean, not having played since 2016 and having that type of performance and almost coming back, I'd just be heartened if I was a Colts fan or the whole Colts organization.
Clint, you're grading hard on Garoppolo. That was the Vikings defense. I mean, that's about as good as they come.
I mean, okay, but I'm just saying, they got rid of him when he went out there. It was supposed to be some big deal with Kyle Shanahan, new coordinator, doing all these things. And,
I want to say this now. We're saying goodbye to Ramona. This will be the last time we see you before the birth of your first child, which is so thrilled for you and Nevin. And that piece you wrote on ESPN.com last week about pregnancy and parenting intersecting with career and how it's seen for mothers and by mothers was tremendous. So, life's biggest moment. Thank you for voicing it. How it could be a career and life enhancement. We love you. Shelburne, Gates, watch Gutierrez and Isola in Showdown next. Duds, the Cowboys nearly shut out by Carolina. The Cardinals barely had the ball all game, rolled by Washington. The Bills, 47-3. They beat Baltimore out for the last playoff spot last year. They lost by 44 this week. Raiders didn't even play, but they traded Khalil Mack and had to watch him do that. And the preponderance of body weight calls like there was any other kind of weight. Not sure exactly what some players are supposed to be doing here. What was most off for you in week 1, Israel?
It was a lot off there, but I'm going to go with the Cowboys here. They're supposed to be, without Dez Bryant, finding more creative ways to get the receivers the ball. You got Ezekiel Elliott just doing this thing where he wants to get fed. They're going to have to feed you because you're the only option. They looked awful against Carolina.
Meanwhile, the Cowboys and Giants play this weekend. One of those teams is going to be 0-2. I'm going to go with Buffalo. Last year, they had Andy Dalton bail them out. They're going to need more than Andy Dalton to bail them out this year. Is Baltimore that good, or is Buffalo just that bad? I tend to think that Buffalo could be the team.
Yeah, they're going to look at the film to see what Nathan Peterman did wrong. Somehow you brought up the Giants in the middle of your answer, I saw that. I don't know how you do that.
Mention the Cowboys.
I don't know how you do that every week. Gutierrez, take the FaceTime.
Thank you. Based on the preseason, everybody was afraid that this new helmet rule will cause flag after flag after flag in the regular season. And we saw the numbers go down in the preseason. But so far, through week 1, that's 14 games, only 1 flag for that particular penalty. Now, I know it's a small sample size and everything else, but this is the point that I like to bring up when people complain about all these defensive rules and saying you're not making football. You can adjust the game and still play the game. You can adjust the way you tackle and, improve safety in the game and not ruin it for everybody. And again, I know this is a small sample size, but if this continues, it's great for the future of football, and it's just great for the NFL to have this rule in.
It's great
Moral of the show, follow the rules. Games. I like it.
There was a hit in Houston, New England, Kevin Johnson and Cordero Patterson. They missed that one. That was helmet to helmet. Yeah. So they're still missing them. It's still happening. We'll see you tomorrow.